I'm going to call this meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee to order. It's what, 3:43. Thank you all for making it. A short week. We're going to go ahead and jump into the agenda. First thing we have is a presentation and discussion regarding the engagement persona mural provided by ETJ Design, and including a review and discussion of the list of engagement contacts collected.
All right, thank you, Ken. Oh, water. Thank you, Juan. So water's right over here. So I just wanted to take a minute and just look at the mural with the point of contacts together and just kind of give everyone an idea of what we've received so far. I know there's a lot of questions, and so just to clarify, this is meant to kind of be a brain dump for every and all organization or group that we can think of that you want to be involved in the comprehensive plan update process. And so what the consultant has done is broken up these contacts into groups. So you have families, students and youth, retirees, senior citizens, and professionals, economic development, visitors and tourism, city officials, art and cultural groups, volunteer organizations, transportation equity, partner agencies, and then athletic sports and wellness, and then there's just anyone else that you think of. And then under each one are subgroups. So for example, under cultural groups, you might have religious organizations, history and heritage groups. And then under each of those, the idea is we group those contacts by category. So Mexican Consulate, History Scott Sosby, African American Heritage Project, Paul Jackson, to contact for that. And so the idea is we just collect these contacts of groups or people that can connect us with those other groups that may be interested in the process or may be underrepresented. And then for each one, if you guys have the information, we can get contact information from you, either email or phone number. Staff is going to go in here next week and start filling in phone numbers, looking up emails and things like that, contact names. So don't feel like you have to provide all this contact information. Really, it's more like what are those main groups and organizations that we need to contact, and then we can do that research. But if you happen to have a good contact or you happen to have a good email or phone number, that would be greatly appreciated. So this is a good start. So I think we're going to go ahead and staff is going to start working on updating the information with phone numbers and emails. But in the meantime, we just ask that you just go in here and just take a look. And if you see something like a group or an email, you're like, oh, I know that person, here's their phone or email, or I know that group, here's the person you need to talk to, or hey, I think this group was left out, just email us, and then we're sending that straight to the consultant, and they're updating this contact list with that. And this is a living, breathing document, so I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, if I don't give my contact in, it's not going to get included. We're going to build this, add on to it. It's just a really good kind of starting point that we wanted to use to pass off to the consultant as they start to create that engagement plan. So I just wanted to go over with you guys. I know this probably isn't something that you use a lot. I've never used this before, so it took me a little bit to figure out how to navigate it. But I just want you guys to know that if you think of anything, please feel free to just email it to us, and don't worry about trying to create sticky notes and edit things. But you're more than welcome to if you would like. This is going to stay open. It's going to stay accessible, and you can go in and update it and view it whenever you like. So are there any questions about the personas mural or the type of groups that need to be included? Or I don't want to spend a ton of time going through it, but I wanted to give the group an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. Or
are there areas where we are missing or need to pay special attention to?
Well, looking at it, I think it's actually pretty broad. I took a look at it earlier in the week, and to me, I think the main groups are covered. But if you look through it and you're like, hey, we didn't think about so-and-so, or like the Native American group or Native American Heritage Society, you can add that to cultural groups, or just email us and let us know, and then we can go in and add it. So I think there's a pretty broad representation in here already, but there's always room for things that we didn't think about, or that come up as you look through.
Are you sending a copy of that to us, or?
It's the same link that we sent out before, but I will resend it.
Okay.
So let me make a note.
The colors or size, do they mean anything?
No, not really. So initially, the way it was set up, the subgroups had the big blue sticky. Then the idea was as you were adding contacts, you would use the yellow. Some people have used orange, green, it doesn't matter. But it was just a way to help kind of categorize things. But I think we all know that blue are the subgroups, everything else is contacts. So don't worry about choosing the right color or anything like that, just drop it in there and then we can always go back and edit it and clean it up a little bit.
What's historic under? I didn't see that.
Oh, cultural groups, so, religious organizations. And then history and heritage groups. And so there's some groups that have been added. Of course, HLPC, historic, the city's committee, of course, is gonna be included, but there's some other groups that aren't affiliated with the city. So if you're looking through here and you're like, hey, you think something was left out, or a group, or a contact, or a certain organization that was identified, please feel free to go in and drop it in there. And so it's more
Are these-
notes.
wrote them all down. I couldn't see it.
Oh. Well, so you can just use your mouse.
misspelled friend.
Yeah. I think we know what you mean.
So I think that raises a good question. There may be some really big issues that relate to Nacogdoches that might not relate to, like history is not just like a small thing under culture, but it's.
Yes, ma'am.
So I wonder if it wouldn't help to put it into another, can you adapt this and make it a whole other category? Because somebody was saying, well, how do I put under history all the different groups, like African American history and Native American history, and kind of gets like so the subgroup under history becomes a subgroup under history, which is subgroup under culture.
Yeah.
It's just
That's a great question. So these primary categories at the top, these are locked. So far, all the history stuff has been put under cultural groups, but like I said, there's still lots of room, and staff, we're gonna go in here and clean it up and consolidate information to make more space, and then just because the actual platform, the whiteboard gets full, we'll let the consultant know, like, hey, we need to reorganize this a little bit. So what I'll do is, after our meeting, I'll reach out to Civic Brand and ask them, hey, can we add a column just for historical groups? And it shouldn't take a lot of time, and then they can just update the portal, and so as you're going through, you can just have your own column. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And there may be other columns to add that relate to Nacogdoches in particular.
Yeah, so like, we have student use in here, but, and that includes NISD, SFA, and so maybe there might be a need to have one of those broken out into their own columns. Like higher education versus secondary school or something like that. So absolutely, I'll go ahead and make a note to reach out and see if we can get a dedicated column just for the history and heritage piece.
Where did these columns come from the consultant?
Yes, so these are broad groups that apply to a lot of different communities. Ours, of course, Nacogdoches is unique because, like Kathleen said, we have a lot of history, more so than your average fair. And so for us, it may be prudent to have a dedicated column just for history groups. Same thing with higher education, because of the university, maybe we should have a separate column just for that. So this is adaptive, it can be updated, so it's meant to work for us. So if we need to have it changed or modified, that's not a problem.
The health and wellness part, I mean, it lends itself, I guess, to green spaces and parks and that sort of thing, like
Yes,
quality
ma'am.
of life things, but I mean, should that also have a subgroup underneath it or a separate group itself?
Health and wellness,
Or maybe the environment, is that what you're thinking of, the green spaces and?
And and I actually think environmental stuff should be separated too, but there is a subcategory for that, but it's not,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know if that needs to be, I don't know,
so.
if it needs to be a
I think
separate
it
one.
sounds right.
So you think a separate column for environmental groups?
Well, I had said like, well, yeah, that and like green, and another one for like green spaces, parks, recreation, gardens, that kind of thing, and I don't know, I didn't get to look at the Post-it notes, I can't remember what's all in each one of them, but they may already have some of those on there, but I'm not certain.
Yeah, and those are gonna be, oh my gosh, I'm touching things too much.
What is a blank space?
So these are additional columns, so we could definitely add historic heritage here, or this could be environment. This could turn into a column, and again, because you can pan around, like essentially it can be as big as you want. I think this is just a starting point of some of the, oh, someone's in there right now doing some things. So the good thing is this is live, it's collaborative, so multiple people can make changes on the fly, and you can see all that.
It's a visiting crab.
Yeah, it assigns an animal whenever, like a random animal whenever you log in, it's kind of funny.
So visiting crab is logged in.
Yeah, that's me.
So whenever you open the website, it'll ask you for your name, and it'll give you like a little animal
All
emoji.
my friends of the circuit. I don't know that I can have it. I don't think you can. Historic or something, subgroup.
Denise, were you saying, if you don't mind me asking, I want some clarification, on the health and wellness, you're thinking that is, are you thinking that green spaces and parks and all that should be a separate one, and then environment?
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm wondering, now that I've seen it as a full group, but I think my
Oh, yeah.
emphasis on environmental stuff would be climate change. I mean, we haven't really talked about that, and maybe having some emphasis on that, you know, how we're gonna prepare for that, sort of, you know, these storms we're having, and,
See, I was thinking of the creeks, I mean, to me, those creeks are a huge deal in our town, and we have got to, you know, talk about how, what happens to them. I mean, the idea that we have sewer systems on both creeks that are falling apart, could fail any minute. But also, what are we gonna do with the creeks? How do we protect them? How do we already have the Lanata Creek study, the people are in there saying, you know, we have contaminants that have to be taken care of, so that's what I was thinking of, even with environment. So we all may have even different thoughts about what this, but that's a huge park. I mean, that's how Nacogdoches was founded, because of those two creeks.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a big deal to have.
I guess there's gonna be some overlap.
Yeah.
These I was just going to show you, so under the broader athletic sports wellness category, there's sports organizations, and then athletic associations, and there's also wellness organizations. And they include more, I think, you know, it's broad groups. You have the Village NAC, which is more like a mental health facility, Camp Gladiator, which is more fitness, Honeywood Psychological Services. And so I think we could have just a wellness organization subgroup, but I think there's still a lot of room here to add more, so we want more subgroups. It's very flexible. So whatever you guys think, just let me know. If you get a lot, we'll just start kind of reorganizing it and making sure everything kind of fits. That's most makes sense. But yes, there's probably gonna be some overlap for sure.
This might be not important, but he was able to edit mine, so that means that if somebody wanted to mess around, they could come in and edit stuff.
Yeah.
So shouldn't it be sort of exclusive for each person that gets on?
Well, the idea is like you guys and the other committee are the only ones that have this link. So I imagine, I'm not sure why someone would go in and just change other people's information unless they saw, oh, maybe there was like an error or spell check. Oh,
Yeah.
Brad spelled friends wrong, let me go in there and change that, you know? But I think as long as it's just with a group, you know,
Yeah.
try.
It's just a setting probably.
Well, and because we knew that these contacts, we were gonna have to go in and update them,
Oh, I see.
we wanted it to be as flexible as possible. And so there is background data that's being collected, so even if something's deleted, I'm sure we could probably recall it or just ask you guys, hey, does this look right? You know, do we need to add it? For sure.
It looks like Jeff App can cover a lot of bases. He's in 5 different columns.
Somebody's a big fan of
So-
Jeff.
So is Charles Bradbury.
Yeah, he's in multiple G. Yeah, yeah, he is. You're right. It's hard to read from back here, but.
Paul, are you in like 4 different?
Yeah.
Can we, if we think of people's names that can be under these sort of green spaces, parks, red, stuff like that, and start putting it down there and
Yes.
we'll add it, and we can put it underneath them.
Yeah, so we have Charles Bradley, I'm sure we have someone on staff who has that phone number and email, and so you don't have to worry about having all the information. A contact name is great, just the name of an organization is great, the more information you have, the better, but you don't have to worry about filling in everything at the time that you're just dropping in ideas and information, so.
Yeah, I think I saw where you mentioned the SFA and
Mhm.
knocked up the ties, so that's attempted at teenagers,
Yeah,
groups, young people.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, church youth groups, other kind of younger teen associations, so definitely for sure. Yeah, so just to look at it real quick, if everyone's interested, you don't mind taking a couple minutes, so you have students and youth. So there's public schools, and then we have, an identifier for homeschoolers, and then under public schools, there's, oh my goodness, there's contact information for different, ISD campuses, there's, Harmony Piano Parent Support Specialist, and there's also, other, I think there's other school districts in here too. So we were actually looking at adding other school districts out in the county, because they come here and shop, and they come here and eat, and they come here and, like, their kids play in our parks. And so reaching out to those different groups too, because we are the hub of the county, and so we do get a lot of visitors from our other school districts. Also universities, so information from them, also private schools are in here, charter private schools. So contacts, if you guys see a contact and you're like, hey, I have a better number, you can add it. If you guys know any formal associations associated with homeschool, that would be great, because we've seen a couple of those dropped in, but we don't necessarily have like a contact name or like a good group, so if you know someone, please feel free to send us an email, let us know. Oh, actually, here we go, Nat Homeschool, there we go, perfect. So Catholic private school, are there multiple Catholic private schools? Is there a certain one that someone knows that has a good contact? Again, we'll Google a lot of this stuff and try to fill it in as best we can, but some of you guys may have a relationship with an association and just have a really good direct contact. So that's just an example, and Charles Bradbury, he's on a lot of it. Jeff is included, and he's just all over
But
the
they're
place.
very honorable people, and I figure they know everything.
Well, they're very involved, yeah, for sure. Okay, so,
Can
Yes,
we
ma'am.
also add a column? So I used that blank column and I put it a different color just because I thought there were some things not covered. And one is neighborhoods and architects and architecture. So I just thought,
Yeah.
we have a lot of top-notch architects and planners and, so tap them. I mean, one helped design windows on the world and
Yeah.
in New York at and the St. Louis Arch, I mean, there's a lot of really
Buildings all over the world, actually.
built buildings
For
all
sale.
over. And to tap that energy and that creativity about those two kinds of buildings and, what they might look like that fit here, I would love to see. We have several people, and there's some I didn't put on there, I mean, I should have put,
under not tech savvy, someone put Charles Bradbury in chat.
So,
So-
but also our neighborhoods, so the architects
Yes.
was one group, and neighborhoods, I didn't know where to put them, and all these neighborhoods need, and they have contact information, and I'm getting it to you, so.
Perfect. I think again, like you mentioned, there's probably gonna be some overlap, I saw like under families and retirees, like there's under both, there's like renters, property owners. But yeah, I think neighborhood associations and having a separate column for neighborhoods, or just, that would include like HOAs.
I put them all in there.
Because there's formal HOAs that have bylaws but then we have neighborhood associations that aren't necessarily incorporated, where they're not formal. And we love to get those people too. And maybe they just have like a Facebook group, or maybe they just have a next door group, or, you know, something a little less structured. So yeah, absolutely, I will make a note of that too.
Could you also explain what now will happen to these, or will that be later in the agenda? Are they,
Yeah,
all these people gonna be called to?
Yeah, I can visit with, I can talk a little bit about it. So this is gonna be a living, breathing document. So this is meant to be added to over time. It can be grown. It's essentially gonna be our, you know, kind of main home base for collecting information. And then we'll have a more formal like Excel spreadsheet where we can export everything and it'll be clear and we'll be able to reference it. But this is a resource for you guys and for staff to go in and just add information, update it, refine it as we go. If we are going through this process and we find, hey, you know what, there's this one group that we're really not reaching, we can go back to this and reference it, or reach out to certain groups that may be affiliated with, you know, adjacent organizations. But this is meant to be a resource for staff, a resource for the committee to build all that community engagement process and to build that contact list.
So my question is, so what will happen to poor Jeff Abt?
Well, I think we need to figure out probably which category he really goes into.
No, but forget the I mean, what's
Yeah.
so when I put somebody up there, you know, I started putting somebody under the old people, and I thought they'd shoot me if I stuck them under old people, so I put them in somewhere else, like neighborhoods or something. But I want to know, what are they going to get called up? Are they going to get a letter? Are they going to get a survey? Are you going to bring groups together?
Yeah, so more than likely they'll get a phone call and it'll be, hey, we're having this event, or hey, we want to reach out to you to see if you can connect us with these other groups so we can have a meeting in a box, or a man on the street event, or are there any events going on in that group that we can piggyback off of and attend? If we're gonna be looking at a specific neighborhood, maybe there's someone in there who can help, you know, provide some primary contacts for that. This is meant to help us open doors to those groups that we don't normally have access to. So we can engage them, meet with them, invite them to events, maybe meet them where they are, if it's a church or some other organized group. It's just meant to help us facilitate that community engagement and either provide a contact who can open the door for us to events or facilities or groups that we can directly contact, or they may have a contact to another group. You know, it's just meant to be like a social kind of network.
Okay, so then when you get into that, then what happens? If you, like the neighborhood?
Yeah.
What will happen? You'll come and like do a survey there, or do a?
Oh, so, I mean,
What's
the
it
public
called?
engagement plan has been finalized yet, and we're gonna go over that in just a
Okay,
little bit.
right.
So we're still working on that. This is to help inform that process that the consultant's putting together. So we've gone ahead and started plugging in some dates, but we haven't finalized everything. And so.
The only reason I ask is I asked somebody, I said, I just put your name up there, and they said, well, what's gonna happen to you?
Yeah,
You know, and it's a good question. I mean, are you responsible for something? Anyway, that's all.
yeah, and so there's gonna be a resource, it's just meant to be a resource. Maybe they're not the best contact, maybe they know who the best contact is, and they can connect us with someone else, so.
Should I only put a different name for every thing?
No, not necessarily. But if you have, you know, like, just putting Jeff App, maybe a name isn't necessarily the most helpful, like if it's under a subgroup, maybe if there's an association he's a part of, or a club or a group, maybe like in parentheses, putting that, or something a little bit more specific to help us. But Jeff App, he's well known, or, yeah, people kind of know who he's affiliated with, so that's the benefit of, you know, a smaller community. Any other
I
questions?
think this is a good time. We had a discussion, we had meeting between the chairs of the downtown and this committee and the consultant a few weeks ago now, I guess. And we discussed the whole information flow process. That's a discussion we've had in the past, how to, if we have information or concerns or not necessarily like it doesn't necessarily need to be some formal resolution of the committee, but just, hey, we wanna make sure that this is being done, how do we make sure that gets consulted? What's the feedback loop on that? Because, I understand it can feel like you put a bunch of information out and it just kind of disappears into the ether, and where did it go and what's gonna happen? Will anything happen? And so we don't want that to be the feeling. We wanna make sure that if we've got something we're concerned about, we have a consensus on a group, whether it's a consultant or council or someone else to look at, we're gonna put that in writing. We're gonna go up through Elena and Jessica, who are our POCs and our liaisons with DTJ. So we have a record of that going up, and then we'll request feedback. And it'll be our responsibility to make sure that we get feedback on those items and bring it back to you in a future meeting. So just so you're aware, going forward, we've got at least some process worked out. We haven't tried it yet. We might have to adjust it once we try it, but we want to make sure that there is a way for us to get the information to them. And then if we want to know, hey, what did they think about that? What is the concern? Or is that a viable issue to discuss? Then we can have that closed on the back end. Because looking at future meetings, there's only going to be a few where we're, again, like the last meeting we did have face-to-face with the consultants. We're only going to have 2 or 3 more over the next year or so. If there's ever an issue that anyone on this committee thinks needs to be brought up, to a high level, and it may be something we want to recommend to, as we get forward in this process, talk about land use or zoning, or it might be historic landmark preservation. Let's put it in writing and we'll get it to the appropriate city, either board or committee. And let that process work. They'll get it to council, or if it needs to go straight to council, we'll just give it to Kathy.
Or Roy.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We'll present it to council, and if we need to, we can go to a council meeting and send a delegate from this committee to talk and explain what the concern is. So, and if anybody's got any questions about that going forward as we have an issue arise, because right now we don't have anything that really needs to go up, but when it happens, we can discuss that in greater detail. So I just want to let you know we had that discussion and we're ready to test that process out when the time comes. Any questions on that? Okay.
Right, any more questions about the personas mural, the contacts? Again, it's a living, breathing document. If you guys do have any questions, I'm more than happy to jump on a Zoom call or Google Meet and share my screen and walk through with you guys. Just call and let me know. And again, always feel free to just shoot me an email with name, group, and then we'll get that added. We want it to be as easy for you guys as possible. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next item. Ken, if that's all right with you?
Yeah.
Thanks to a generous donation from Mr. Matt Moore, the city purchased a number of planning topic books. Matt asked us to have the consultant select a number of books that could be easily digested by the community, to talk about concepts related to transportation, to neighborhood development, to development patterns, to walkability, to different things like that. So these are a sampling of the books. We have 2 copies of each one, and they will be available next week in the library. We are gonna have a kind of like a public service announcement where we'll put it in our newsletter, we'll put it online, we'll put it in social media, we'll send it to our local media group, talking about, hey, we have this like planning nook in the library. These books will be tagged in the metadata, so if you're online searching for it, you can just search planning, and these books will pop up and they'll be available to check out. And we are very thankful to Mr. Moore for providing that donation. And if you guys are looking at these books and you're like, hey, I think we should add this other one, we can add books. So this is just kind of like starting point. We can add to the collection if you guys like, but we wanted to let you know that these are going to be available to the public, and hopefully these are a more readable, user-friendly book versus like a textbook you might get on planning items. So we will be promoting that next week, and again, feel free to check them out. And if you have anything that you want to add, just let us know, and we'll build off that.
Do you know if we spent the whole budget?
We did. So it was like right at $1,000, and we got it was like 10 different books, and we got 2 copies of each. And we've also asked the consultant just to provide some free online resources for the committees and for just the general public. So different websites, publications, podcasts, things that people can just access on their own time and read and listen to that talk about planning topics. And so we'll be sharing that too. So we're working on creating that list. It'll be coming soon. So yeah, we're really excited about the books. I think they're great. There's some newer ones in here, some older ones.
Do you want us to just pass them around?
Sure, yeah, we just spread them out, and again, these are gonna be online. We will send out that promotional material to the committee. You can share it with your networks, and you'll be able to go and check it out. All right, any questions about that? All right, we'll go on to the next item. All right, so for those of you who attended the last meeting in February, DTJ did an exercise with the group where we printed these large maps of the community, and we asked the group to identify neighborhoods or delineate areas of the city that were identifiable as unique places to help us start to develop more specific planning areas. You know, so they're studying the city as a whole, but maybe there are certain neighborhoods that we want to look at in a little bit more detail, or we want to, delineate one place or neighborhood from the other. And what they did is they took those drawings that we did and they created a map. And so part of that exercise, they want to create some character analysis of these areas, right? So what's the character of this neighborhood, good or bad? What's the housing character of the area? What kind of assets are in this neighborhood? So I'm gonna show you guys the map, and there's about 11, actually I think there's like 9 different neighborhoods, and we can actually go through and I can edit the boundaries of these if we think actually that neighborhood should go over a street. And then there's a little exercise that I'd like to show you guys that we'd like your help on as far as collecting photos that kind of illustrate the character of these areas. So I'm gonna exit my PowerPoint presentation. And so some of these were areas that were primarily residential, they could be commercial, they could be natural areas. And so I just wanna expand on this a little bit. All right, so we have neighborhoods 1 through 11. So like for instance, number 11 is primarily the university. Oh my gosh, no, I moved it. It's primarily the university and then the surrounding neighborhoods. So you've got this section of North Street. You've got the Brigade, North Pecan residential area to the north. And then another neighborhood area includes Pecan Parks, kind of that southern half of our Old Town, Main Street, downtown area. It has an active hospital, Fredonia Hotel, the downtown area. Another neighborhood boundary or planning area that was identified was this area of the east side of town, which includes Walmart, neighborhood market, some residential areas, And so this is just their way of creating some more just specific areas to help us develop the study. And so I just wanted to go over this with you, see if there was anyone that you wanted to look at in particular. And again, this is based off those kind of hand drawings that we did during that exercise. So this can be modified, it can be updated. The other thing I wanted to show you is that to help develop these areas further, they would like us to essentially go out and take photos that illustrate the character of an area. So in your handout, there's actually on the last page, there's a neighborhood unit exercise, and it describes the process in detail. So there's 11 neighborhoods, and what we could do is we could split up the committee into groups, and so it could be groups of 2, and each one gets a neighborhood unit. If there's an area that you're like, hey, I actually live here, I'm really familiar with it, I'll volunteer to do that one, that's fine too. But we don't expect everyone in the committee to go out and take pictures of all of these different neighborhoods. We were thinking we would be more of like a volunteers scenario where we take 2 people and assign them to each one. And then what you're gonna be looking for are different attributes. So under the checklist, for photos and text, it talks about taking photos and then providing descriptive text that include images that represent the character of the neighborhood. So the first one is positive attributes. That could be covered shaded walkways, or attractive building design, or nice open space, like some positive qualities about that neighborhood that make it great. The other one is negative issues. So does this neighborhood have a lack of street lighting? Does it have no sidewalks or damaged sidewalks? Are there issues with maybe some code enforcement or property maintenance? And then number 2 is images representing the character of housing. So the first one is really like neighborhood-wide character. The second one is specific to housing within that neighborhood. And again, it's broken down into positive and negative. And they give you some examples. So like under positive, well-maintained lawns, well-maintained houses, maybe some common amenities for the neighborhood. Negative ones include, maybe junk cars in the yard, debris and trash, poorly maintained homes, overgrown, weeded lots. And then the third one is images representing assets within the neighborhood. And so that could be really nice quality neighborhood retail, schools, churches, community facilities, parks and trails, and amenity that really increases the overall quality of that neighborhood. And so what we did is we put together a little online survey for you guys to use that will actually allow you to take photos and geolocate them. So you'll be able to open up the survey on your phone, identify where you're at, take a picture, select which category that you want to assign it to, and then just provide a short comment and you're done. And you can do that for every category. So I wanted to run through that exercise with you just to show you how it would work. So this is going to be shared with both committees. And we'll have it go live next week. So this is called Nacogdoches Neighborhood Units, and we provided directions. So when you open it up, it's going to tell you that this is for our neighborhood unit exercise, and it's going to ask you to identify, illustrate with photos, and describe with text both positive and negative attributes associated with different neighborhoods, including housing and assets within that area. And the photos that are being used can be geotagged, so whenever you open it up, you're going to want to turn on or enable your location on your mobile device, whether that's an iPad or a phone or what have you. And so as you scroll down, you can locate by address. So you can type in the address to locate where you are, or you'll actually be able to use the map and zoom in. So if you're on a hard corner, or if you're at a property that doesn't really have an address, you can actually drop a pin where you are and then use it that way. And then down here, it's going to ask you to select a category. So you can choose from neighborhood character positive, neighborhood character negative, and then for housing, same thing, housing character negative or positive, and then neighborhood assets. Depending on which you choose, it's going to give you different types of attributes, examples that you can choose from. So it's going to ask you which category does the attribute represent in the photo, what does it fall under, So we provided some examples here for you, and so a neighborhood attribute could be attractive, well-maintained buildings, a well-maintained landscaped open space, well-maintained street lighting, covered shaded walkways. Or if it's something that doesn't fit into these categories, you can select other and then just type in what your comment is. So these are broad categories. It can be anything. It can be a really nice subdivision sign that you think is attractive and adds quality to the neighborhood. It can be a really nice, well-lit parklet. It can be, all kinds of things. And so we don't want to restrain you to these categories. We just want to give you some examples and prompts to help you as you go through taking your category photos. And then you'll hit submit, and you can add any comments, and then you're done. And you can do this for each category. So you'll have a separate submission for neighborhood character positive, neighborhood character negative. So the idea is you have 5 different submissions for your neighborhood. And this is going to be, again, geolocated. So you can just turn on, enable your location, and we can actually look at the photo and tell where you were. But this helps too, where you just zoom into the map. Does anyone have any questions about this? You don't have to download an app. You can just open it in your browser. There is an app that you can download, but it's not necessary. And this is mobile friendly. I tested it today, and so it's very straightforward. You don't have to put in your email or phone number or name or anything like that. You're just going in and just literally hitting submission. And so what I wanted to do today is show you this survey, ask you guys if you had any questions, and then look at the map and see if you wanted to talk about splitting these neighborhoods up into groups. If there's an area that maybe you live in or you're familiar with and you're like, hey, I want to go and collect photos for that area, we can do that. If there's an area that you're like, hey, this line doesn't make sense, this really be pushed out to the next street or something like that, we can do that as well. So I know I just threw a lot of information at you. So I think first I'd like to look at the neighborhoods and then make sure we all agree, hey, these are the boundaries of this area that we talked about during our last meeting. And then we can go into who wants to volunteer to go out and collect information on each one.
I have a comment and a question real quick before you jump into that.
Yeah.
We've discussed, Steele and I have discussed going forward for future meetings. And this is actually a good time to talk about this because we spent a lot of time looking at these neighborhoods at the last meeting, drawing boundaries, and talking about different features, historical and other landmarks that are need to be preserved or recognized within those areas. So for those of you who weren't at that meeting, you may be like, where'd all this come from? In future meetings, we're gonna have a recap of what we did the past meeting at the outset to kind of get everybody on the same page. And then also, we're gonna look 2 or 3 meetings ahead, so we have an idea of what agendas are gonna be. 'Cause it's gonna be fluid, and I think things are gonna move around, and we're talking about, I think we're gonna talk about at the end possibly one of the summer meetings, because probably it'll just be me here anyway, or actually I won't be here. So there'll probably be 2 people here. Trying to be flexible, but also making sure we have a good kind of roadmap of where we've been and where we're going. Makes it easier for people who weren't able to attend the last meeting. We don't expect everybody to be able to attend every meeting, obviously. It's an unreasonable expectation, and we want everybody to feel like they come to a meeting, they get reset pretty quickly on what we've been doing, and they're ready to jump in. So, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah,
Okay. So hopefully that'll work out. If anybody has any feedback on how that looks next time and would like it to add anything else, feel free to let us know. And then my question on this, I know, I think Francois especially said, he wanted to make sure we had these neighborhoods right because they're gonna go into kind of a neighborhood-centric process with the plan.
Yeah.
How does that gonna look? Because that's completely different from the last plan. And just like so if I'm going out and taking pictures of things, like what is the end goal of this. I have trouble envisioning what we're supposed to, what our data is supposed to end up doing.
Yes,
And I think
so-
that might help me figure out what to take pictures of.
Yes, I totally agree. I think the feedback that we've gotten as far as the current plan is it's not neighborhood oriented. It's kind of very vague and aspirational and policies apply to citywide. There's some very unique areas in town that maybe should have some special treatment versus others or should be addressed differently in the comprehensive plan, different opportunities, different challenges. And so we really need to be intentional about identifying that there's real different unique places within the city. And so this is, so in order to kind of make this really a truly more neighborhood oriented plan, because the neighborhoods are the city. It's a city, but it's made up of these specific identifiable places. And so this is that process of identifying those unique neighborhoods, doing a deeper dive, identifying the character of those areas. Neighborhood assets need to be preserved, areas of opportunity where we can maybe make some improvements, opportunities for redevelopment, city intervention. Maybe there's a great neighborhood that we want to replicate that somewhere. Well, we need to look at that and identify that and recognize that. Areas that maybe are historic but haven't been recognized for their historic character in the past. We talked about that. And so this is that process of delineating those areas and then highlighting what makes that unique, what makes that different, what about that should we celebrate, what about it can we make better, what of those unique assets need to be preserved in that area. Does that make sense? Is that, yeah.
Is that gonna, is it gonna be, well, you may not be able to answer this, I mean, it's a good question for DTJ. Will each neighborhood have its own plan, or will it?
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. So, each neighborhood won't have its own plan because that's a very kind of in-depth separate process.
Yeah.
But the comprehensive plan may say, hey, we recommend you do a neighborhood plan for this neighborhood. Or we recommend that these two neighborhoods have a lot of opportunities for redevelopment or need city intervention to make serious improvements, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's housing. We recommend you do a more detailed analysis, neighborhood plan for this area. So it won't be that every neighborhood has its own unique plan, but it'll be more high-level overview to give the city an idea of what areas do garner further study. So get an idea of the character of the city overall, and then places where we want to spend some more time and do some more evaluation, almost like the downtown master plan. It would be the same level of that, but on a neighborhood scale. The downtown is its own kind of neighborhood. Does that make sense?
So your pictures better be real good for your area.
And some areas are more dense than others, some are more suburban, some are more mixed use. There's a lot of different, very unique neighborhoods in the city. You go from one to the other and they don't feel or look the same. And so those are things that we want to highlight, we want to celebrate, we want to recognize. And so this is just kind of that first step. So we wanted to show you the map that they came up with based on that drawing, and let us know if you see something that's just like way off, that actually this neighborhood should really include this other subdivision or something like that. We can do that now.
I'm curious, downtown, it overlaps with that, yeah.
Mhm.
Which one will, is the downtown plan for that area, or
So the
should
downtown,
it be divided?
yeah, so this neighborhood includes the downtown. The downtown master plan doesn't include this whole neighborhood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the downtown is gonna include that core historic area, and then it's gonna spread out a little bit because of the surrounding areas. Maybe they're not historic overlay, they're not specifically downtown, but they're an extension of that neighborhood. And so it's one of the things that we talked about early on in this process is how do you create transition between areas? How do you create more compatible development that respects the current urban fabric while still allowing for growth and development? And so the downtown plan will have that core downtown area, then it'll include areas on the fringes to talk about should, we actually extend or broaden our downtown area? Should we add more historic overlays? Should we have like transition development zones that are context sensitive? And so, I guess to answer your question, Brad, the downtown master plan includes some of the area in this neighborhood, but not all of it. And actually, it probably includes some area that's maybe a little farther to the west, across North Street.
What does the transition zone mean?
So
What
like,
would they do? Can you give me an example of that?
yeah, so, you have the kind of urban commercial core in downtown. You've got the square with the brick streets and the very dense, compact commercial pattern. But then as you move out and you go north and east, the buildings are a little bit smaller, they're not as close together, you have more residential, the scale is a little bit different. So as you move out from that center, it does get a little bit more suburban, a little bit more dense. And so the type of building you want in the downtown core on the square maybe isn't the same kind of building that you want over here on Hospital Street. And so kind of acknowledging that there's different transitions in that development pattern as you move out of the core, and how can we acknowledge that and incorporate that and plan for that, so that way we don't have, we try to avoid undesirable developments where you have something that's allowed next to something that's not appropriate. That's the best example that I can think of, Brad, because you talk about existing development versus zoning. There's a lot of single family development is actually zoned multifamily, it's zoned commercial, and there's no accommodations for context sensitive development in our ordinance. And so we really need to take another look at this area because it's unique. It's something that the city said downtown is important to us. We want to preserve that. We want to allow for growth while not negatively affecting the people who live there and the neighbors. So the downtown plan will take a stab at that to see, that's those transition zones I mentioned.
I just don't know what a transition zone is. What's a transition building?
Well, it's more like, so, just for example, Brad, just for discussion purposes, so the downtown core, maybe the areas that have brick streets, maybe it extends to Hospital Street. And so maybe that's the boundaries of your commercial core for downtown, and then maybe from Hospital Street to Arnold Street is like that second tier of less commercial, more mixed use, single family. And as you get farther out to Hugh Street, this area has a more residential character. And so maybe you have different development standards for each zone that allow for less commercial as you move out, that allow for requirements for building height maximums, or additional separation or screening to accommodate a mix of uses that doesn't create a nuisance for the neighbors, because the same type of development that's appropriate on the square, like a restaurant and a hotel and an entertainment venue, they may not be necessarily appropriate on Mount Street. So just accounting for that, and then adopting our development ordinances to allow for compatible development, recognizing the character of what's there. Because the character is different from block to block, from street to street. So just recognizing that and maybe adapting our ordinances so that way we don't have as many issues.
So it would be a zoning thing primarily?
Yeah, so it would be something that we adopt in our zoning ordinance. This plan would help us identify those areas. As an example, you're welcome. I hope that answered your question.
It sounds like the transition zone, like, it's not a de jure or like a zoning or land use thing, because we don't really do transition zoning here.
Yeah, well, so.
We don't have like a step down between our business and our residential a lot of times. It's just like B2, R1.
So
Though some cities I think do that.
Yeah.
But in practice we do. Like you'll see an empty field or B2 that's not developed in R1.
Yeah.
And then that I think is a transition zone, but it's not zoned for one.
It's just because it hadn't been developed.
Right, yeah, but that's where I think we need to look at and go, well, like Maroney Street, for example, or University there, where we were talking about developing with apartments or R1 or what's gonna go there. You know, what would be a good use between the business and R1, like how do you step up and down, right? Is that the thought?
Yeah, so a good example, how many of you are familiar with College Station and the Northgate area? So Northgate, which is a area immediately across the street from College Station, has experienced a ton of redevelopment recently. And the city, when they were doing their comprehensive plan, said, okay, this is gonna be a special district, we're gonna treat it differently, because there's some historical significance, and it's more of a mixed use, we know it's gonna be primarily students. So it's Northgate, but then they have sub areas within that district. So they have Northgate 1, Northgate 2, Northgate 3. So the properties that are directly along University are Northgate 1. Those are all commercial, they allow for very high intense uses. They allow for very dense multifamily development. And then you get a few streets over and it's Northgate 2. The zoning is the same and they allow the same uses, but they start having maximums on density. And the parking demands change. And so the same uses are allowed, but the makeup and mix of those uses as far as how many apartments you can have is different. And how tall your building can be is shorter. So it gets more restrictive as you move out to allow for really intense development in the core and then a more suburban residential type as you move out towards that area. So that's those transition zones where the zoning is the same, but depending on what area you're in, you'll have additional restrictions that help accommodate for more compatible development with existing neighborhoods and patterns. And so I think that's more of a example. And if you ever get a chance to drive through there, you can see it as you drive down. There's a significant change, and that's deliberate. It's because the city adopted ordinances to create that scenario based on what was already there. So, does that make sense, Brad? That's what I envision. It's something that we don't really have right now.
So you said you wanted us to identify the boundaries on all 13 of these different neighborhoods and see if we agree or
Yeah, so I
disagree
thought
on
I
those
would
boundaries?
just, I thought I would go through each one real quickly and just look at the major streets that are bounding them and see like generally is this a recognizable place or area? So let's start.
Can you say the streets and everything? I mean, because I know that you're familiar with all this.
I'm gonna zoom in. And also, Kathleen, I was gonna tell you, like, we don't have to finish all this today. It could be that, I'm gonna send this out to you guys and you can just let me know, hey, this, I think this should actually extend. And we can update it as we go, but this is meant to generally kind of capture those areas. So for instance, the one here that includes
Can you name that?
the downtown area, yeah, this one is neighborhood 12.
I've actually got a thought on that.
Okay.
When we assign these neighborhoods to different people, I think maybe that's part of it is going down the boundaries, making sure that they're correct.
That's great.
And then if they're not, then those subcommittees or groups
Yeah.
that come back and say, hey, this one needs to move. And I bet we'll have consensus between the neighboring, yeah, that line needs to move.
That's a great.
I think it's a great idea, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah.
And so we'll provide maps and I'm gonna see if we can actually connect this map to that survey we were just looking at. So you can just identify that sub area. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. So let's just do that. And so what we can do right now is just try to get some volunteers. So it looks like there's actually 13 in total. And what I was thinking is that we would have 2 people for each neighborhood. And I'll just start with,
So I have a bunch of questions.
yeah,
So,
yes ma'am.
so can we, is it just us or can we ask other people to use the app and do it in the neighborhood? Because there may be other
Yeah.
residents who,
Yeah.
would want, I mean, I can think of half my block who'd be happy to help, do all this.
For
They
now,
probably do a better job than I would do.
Yeah. For now, we're just sharing it with the downtown and comprehensive plan committees, because you guys had the opportunity to go through that initial exercise with a consultant. I think in the future, we can open it up. But for now, just to help kind of establish those neighborhoods up front, we just wanna use these groups, and then in the future, we can open it up.
You know, just think about
Yeah.
what you're asking.
Mhm.
If there are two of us and we're covering, say, 15 blocks,
Yeah,
I would really like some help,
Yeah.
you know, so, and some of us may be able to, you know, and so other people could take the picture and upload it, and you're saying no, just keep it to
well,
us, or?
and I just wanna try to make sure that it's clear that this isn't meant to be like a block by block analysis of the neighborhood. It's just meant to kind of generally capture overall the character, and so you may just have like 2 or 3 submissions for assets, or 2 or 3 photos that capture the housing character of the area. So it's not meant to be a
Square inch.
block by block. It's just meant to kind of generally, here's the character of this area. And then if we need to go back and look at it and add more, we can. Maybe we'll find out that this neighborhood is actually 2. We want to separate these into additional sub areas. So this is just that initial process. I like to see how this goes, and then
Okay,
we
but
can.
that may be great for like homogeneous neighborhoods, where
Yeah.
you know, but it may not be really good for neighborhoods that are all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, like, because we get some blocks that have housing that is already falling apart and it's only 5 years old.
Yes.
And then we have other places that, you know, are beautiful historic homes in the historic overlay.
Yeah.
And then we have medical, I mean, there's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
You
that's
can't capture it in
why
3 pictures.
we wanted to allow these photos to be geolocated, so when we're looking at them, we can see, okay, it's in this area.
Right.
So after we collect that initial set, we can sit down and say, okay, this actual neighborhood area needs to be delineated further into more specific, like this neighborhood is actually 2 neighborhoods. But I guess to answer your question,
Still keep it to.
we really wanted to give it to this group first. And
Have they requested a certain amount of data?
no.
Okay.
So, and again, staff is gonna go out and take pictures, we're gonna do our own research, but as the committees.
Initial survey.
Yeah, as the committees who helped create these initial boundaries,
Yeah.
we wanted to get your feedback on what your opinions are of what makes this an area,
Okay.
like what makes this unique.
Okay, I'll be obedient, I'll do whatever.
As long as there's a single point of contact, is there any problem? You know, especially if it's a bigger neighborhood, like you're saying.
Yeah, or complex, some big,
Yeah, or if there's multiple, like,
you know, Colonial Hills is,
right, like, I can't read from here, the numbers, but you might have various different things that need to be documented. If you have somebody that's volunteering to take pictures, as long as they're coming through a single point of contact, they could just text you the picture and then you could enter it, right?
smart, yeah, idea.
And
But that brings me to question.
that way you're making sure you're not doubling up on it.
Right, that's good, yeah. So my other question is, can we test the technology? I think that it would be a good thing, this is something I do in groups, and I'm sure you do it, is you test the technology while we're all here. So if we have a technology question, like on the, as you know, my first sticky note, I was on a small computer, I ended up sticking it over the directions, so I couldn't even read the directions anymore.
Sure.
So,
Yes, we can absolutely do that. I'll have a link, I'll email it all to you right now, and then you can open it up on your devices. I will tell you that this morning, we were having a little bit of issues with the location piece, so we have to refine that a little bit, but everything else should be working just fine. So we won't ask you to actually go in and start doing the survey until next week, because we need to tweak a couple of things. But yeah, so let me do that right now, I will.
And part of the reason I'm asking is because I've used the app Survey 123 and had a lot of difficulty.
So
across.
the good thing about this is that it'll ask you, like, do you wanna open in your browser or open in the app? You can just open in the browser, you don't have to download the app if you don't want to. And so it's compatible with iPhone, with Android, so let me pull that up. I will send.
And I'm just asking this as a matter of practice as we go forward, if we're gonna be doing, because there's more technology.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
It's ArcGIS Survey 123.
Mhm.
But the app, you have to sign in, and we have to have the password and all that.
Well, there's actually an option not to sign in, but I was having trouble with that, so that's why
Right.
I
Yeah,
wanted to give
terrible
the
job.
opportunity to just open up in the browser.
Okay.
So you can create an account and do it that way, absolutely. We just didn't want you to do that if you didn't want to. So,
And it's very quirky.
Yeah.
The app is.
It has 3 stars.
It's with 3 stars.
People are not happy.
I take it, we never got it to work, and we had, houses that were blown away and stuff.
So you've used this before? Kathleen, you used this before?
I have, and it got really quirky, but it was the sign-in stuff is part of it, and then, some of it is your connection. But that's why I wanna test it on the non-app.
Sure.
now, another option that the consultant provided, they actually created a Google folder, album, and they had instructions on how to enable geolocating on your phone. So that way when you took a picture, it would geolocate it and then upload the photo with descriptions, and it just seemed like a lot of steps.
It's
So
okay,
we thought this was easier. Yeah, so I sent it all to you guys. I wanna give you guys a minute to open it up, and then in the meantime,
Denise, will you forward, or one of you who has my email, forward it to me?
we can also take a 5-minute bio break if you guys want. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you guys a minute, I'll be right back, and then we can walk through if you guys have any issues, just do a test. I'll be right back.
I mean, maybe the app is, this may work really great. Yeah, forward to it, yeah, if you don't mind. Cause I don't put my city stuff on here.
I guess maybe it's
In
just.
case somebody complains about something and then my whole phone has to go to a lawyer.
Is it the Yahoo? Is it the Yahoo?
Yeah.
You already said? Oh, no, I was asking if it was the Kathleen Grant app. It wasn't that.
No, just Yahoo. She just sent it to me. You did, oh, good, I'll get all of it.
Do you have the Nacogdoches neighborhood unit?
I sure do.
That'd be good.
But like on yours, I can see
I can attend.
you're located.
Did you make, do you have location services?
Yeah, no, I normally keep them on, but let me double check.
I used to turn it off to see what the.
It was creepy, like walking to Walmart. It was like,
I just opened it.
My husband's a cybersecurity expert,
Is it general?
Some pennies.
I'm not sure,
I think I copied it.
I have an Android phone. Maybe it's security.
Yes, there is.
If one of you gets into it, are happy with it, how it works, I mean, I'm sure I'll be able to do it, but I just want to make sure.
I'm downloading it, but it came right up when you open it.
But try and upload some, try and do one of those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is,
Cause
Did
sometimes,
she say it was live?
I guess it'd be
Yes,
a
it is.
browser.
It's live?
My,
I didn't know you were back, sorry.
Elena, is there a,
On my school computers.
I got the app open, but it says I don't have
You're right,
a server.
that was exactly what it is.
That's why I don't like the app, because it wants you to create an account.
Open in browser?
Yeah, just open it.
Oh, so I already have 11 records from whoever has been submitting stuff, so we already have stuff in from what you guys just submitted. So far, I've had 11 people with 3 total participants. Anonymous user, Jack C. And so we can go through and.
okay,
So
this
you're gonna
is,
tell us our number, and then we set all the other numbers of the.
okay, perfect.
And so it looks like we're already starting to get stuff in. And what I'll do is I'll go through it and I'll delete it legally, but
Thank you for saving us from the end.
so sometimes, it's just a prompt that pops up and.
Is there like a special, how do you get that? How do you get that?
Oh, I didn't have to get on it.
It's like,
This is when it looks like you're already
no, like,
so.
creatures now.
It says, I didn't even, yeah, sorry.
So I guess, have these.
I always like to get this stuff.
It's just geotags.
That's why I'm like.
Upload the photo.
Or this is more like a organization.
So we have like URL.
Yeah, so. You open the browser or app, and you just open the browser.
Like we've done all this.
The link really
It's in your
Yeah,
photo.
so,
Right?
when you click on the link, it's gonna prompt you to open in the browser or open the app, just open in the browser.
Yeah, I hear you.
And it'll open up an internet tab, and then you can just
Oh, just.
plug it in that way.
We got it.
It's probably better, everybody knows
This
it.
page will, and once you get there, then everything you're gonna do, you have.
What about it?
When you're ready to submit.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you can make multiple submissions.
Yeah,
Of course.
but, the other thing that you sent us is I have a number of all those, different neighborhoods.
Orange
So,
Division too,
What we're gonna do is either one or two things, we'll either send you a separate map, or I'm gonna try to get our GIS guy to figure out how we can get DTJ's map and upload it into the ArcGIS, so you can just zoom in and select your neighborhood unit. So we're working on that this weekend too, that's why I was like,
Okay.
it's not
So
so
you
ready.
don't really want us to do this till next week?
Yes, ma'am, but you can be testing it to make sure, that's what we're doing just now, to make sure it actually worked and see if we get any technical issues. But no, ma'am, what I'll do is Monday, I'll send out an email with detailed instructions, and kind of a how-to, so if anyone has any questions, there'll be like a guide of how to go through it.
Elena,
Yes, ma'am.
did you compile a summary
You're allowed
of all of
five
the issues
photos for a
and?
file, it says.
For one submission.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, can I go?
Was there a summary compiled from the group feedback from last time, of the issues, et cetera, by community? Is there any?
Yes, so we have minutes also, we took those markups and we scanned all those in. And so that's stuff that's being captured and categorized and organized. So the map that we just saw was a summary of that information. And so, yes, I don't have like a narrative written up for you, but if that's something that you guys want, we can do that, take those visual exercises and summarize those like in a little narrative for you guys.
I think she's referring to the one group, you all talked about a lot of the challenges, not the ones
Oh,
with the,
yes.
that's what she's asking.
Yes, yes, so all that was consolidated by the consultant, and so we have all that was transferred from the written stuff to electronic form.
Well, even to complete the exercise that you're describing, in terms of taking photos, it seems like that would be helpful. Right. We've already identified issues and commonalities, et cetera.
Yeah, you know what?
You know what to look for immediately.
Yeah, I have that scanned in, I'll include it in the email with the survey link, and so you guys can have that as a reference to go back on and look and see, that's a great idea. Let me go make a note before I forget to do that.
And I think all your summaries, whatever we, cause we say stuff and it's kind of left out there in
Yes.
limbo, we don't know anything about.
I don't have a Gmail, I have a Hotmail.
I don't think we need to. And that's what Ken was talking about earlier, like talking about that feedback loop and taking the information that we reviewed at the last one, summarizing it and recapping it at the next meeting. And so we have a written record to help show where we've been and where we're going. So that's something that we're gonna incorporate in those future meetings to make sure that everyone's on the same page and there's as much of a ease of transfer of information as possible. And then if you guys have more questions, I can always add things to the meetings, give you more information, say, hey, I actually wanna know about the other things that we talked about, well, I'll bring that back and I'll share it with the group. If I forget something, let me know.
Are you going to have a select, you said you wanted 2 per neighborhood? So are you gonna have us select those neighborhoods before we go, so we kinda know who we're working with?
Yes, ma'am, that was the idea. I'm just gonna make a footnote and then we'll go back to that.
I'm kind of having a hard time seeing where those neighborhoods are on that map.
Do I need to say?
Yeah, all of them.
Well, and this projector isn't great, and I might pull the curtains, because it's affecting the
But if you just
lights.
even tell us the street boundaries, most of us have an idea of what the city looks like.
Okay. Or this. I think that'll help. All right. Is that better? All right, so let's start with this area over here. This is on the west side of town. It's bounded by North Street on the east, the Loop on the west, and West Main Street on the south. So you have North Street, West Main, the Loop, and then this is West Austin. So as far as landmarks, you have the location of the new senior center in Austin Hill subdivision here. You have the commercial corridor, includes Kroger, restaurants. Down here along West Main, that includes the police department, Clear Springs, Annie Pastas,
So
some of that
University
older
Drive.
retail, and then the Loop includes some industrial land uses, so city facilities, Sandia Mobile Home Park is over here, and then there's a lot of undeveloped area as well. Mill Pond Park, and so that's generally this area, and then Old Tyler Road cuts through it as well. So this was identified as a area. And as you guys are out taking photos, if we determine that maybe this area boundary should be expanded or made smaller, turned into 2, we can absolutely do that, like I mentioned earlier. Does anyone have any major issues with what's being shown for this boundary so far?
It's huge.
Yeah, well, and a lot of that is, there's so much undeveloped area. And so, I think you'll find that areas that are more populated, those are gonna be smaller planning areas. Just like this area here, this is just north of that, so north of.
What was that number if we moved?
Oh, I'm sorry, so this one is neighborhood number 7. And so while we're talking about it, is anyone who'd like to volunteer to go out and take pictures of this one? Okay. And I will try to get 2 for each one. Anyone else?
I'll do what we can.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this one to the north, so this is the north side of West Austin. West side of North Street, the Loop, and then to the north, we have southeast Stallings, or sorry, northwest Stallings. And so in this area, you've got the landfill, you've got the TA Express gas station over here. You have the retail center that has the Fuzzy Taco and T-Mobile and some other retail anchors. You've got the Creek Bend Boulevard, this is that kind of sorority fraternity row, where Peking is, Tractor Supply, and then here we have, there's some city facilities as well. Landfill, like I said, SFA softball stadium, and so, but again, a lot of this is undeveloped area.
What's this?
The north side of West Austin, so this is West Austin that's cutting through.
It seems kind of overwhelming. I don't know how you represent that neighborhood with photographs.
Yeah, and
What is that? What number is that?
this is number 6. And so I know it looks large, but a lot of this area isn't accessible. And so looking at, like street frontages, for West Austin, it's really just gonna be this duplex neighborhood here.
You can assign me whatever, I'll take whatever.
All right, thank you.
Whoa.
Along the loop, it's gonna be mainly just these commercial, industrial uses. And then along North Street, you're gonna have some commercial. I think you may spend a little bit more time looking at Creek Bend, this subdivision here. But a large portion of the property isn't actually accessible, like you can't get there. And so it's really those areas where you have those public streets, it's the perimeter.
And we're not allowed to trespass for this, right? We have
Yes,
we don't have like
we
a
can.
badge or something where we can get on people's property.
Some of these people are gonna wonder, you're out taking pictures in some of these areas.
Social workers do it all the time. Did it this morning.
So and Brad, like you were saying, if, once you guys are going out and taking pictures and you're like, this area really this boundary is too big, it should be two separate planning areas, we can look at that.
Well, like the one below, the first one, N7, that you did,
Yes,
like it has neighborhoods, but it also has, I think, the sheriff's office.
Yeah.
So,
so these are neighborhood units, and so they may include multiple subdivisions. A neighborhood is more than just a subdivision, it includes retail, it includes community facilities, it's more of a broader planning area. And so this is a neighborhood unit, meaning these are gonna be made up of multiple subdivisions and commercial areas and things like that. And so
how do
that's,
they distill that information into something? I don't know what they do.
this was based, again, the boundaries were based on the exercise that we went through last time.
Right, but I mean, what
But
does
they're
the
gonna
company
use this
do?
so they're gonna use this to create those planning areas, so that we can look at, those unique areas of the city, those areas maybe there's opportunity for city investment or redevelopment, look at areas that need to be preserved, but we have to delineate what those areas are. So this just helps us identify and name those different areas based on their character. And again, Brad, this can be updated, amended. I'm not gonna be surprised if we get into this and we're like, hey, we need to tweak these boundaries a little bit. Or we need to actually like cut this up into additional category. So this is just an initial crack at it, Brad. This is more than likely gonna be, it is open to be updated, amended, tweaked. So I don't want you to feel like this is gonna be the final product. It's just their first kind of stab at it based on those drawings that we did in the exercise.
But when are we gonna have this done?
We're gonna give you guys at least a month. Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay, perfect.
Now, anybody who leaves, we can assign them anything we want.
That's right, I believe. Yes,
This is something.
so we're gonna give you guys at least 30 days to go through, and so, there should be plenty of time. Yes, ma'am?
No, can I pick the one I okay, if you go, west of, Star, the one that's at the University, north of University and Star,
Okay.
east to the loop, that area, it's right, you've been showing it a lot.
Would it make sense to have anybody who's got a strong preference here can volunteer if you don't? Instead of we could just randomly
The
assign.
Texaco station,
Yes,
that
I
area.
Okay.
Are we gonna have to do multiple?
I think it had.
think so.
On the
Because there's
west
not enough of
On
us to do
the
13.
east side.
Okay.
The other one is the university. You know, so the
Denise's
Mine Garden
preference.
and the, Texaco station, and then it goes.
You got the northwest or northeast?
Yeah, here.
Or is that
Yeah.
When I see the thing, you see the big map, then I can show you that.
Are you getting all that?
That's not it.
That's Cleveland Hills.
No. It's the one, it's south of
Okay.
there.
Are you taking our name?
Yes.
I'll do N8, and if I need to,
I
I'll
don't
do
know that
N6
number,
also.
what is that number?
I think we're gonna have to do more than
Is that where the shopping center is?
The shopping center and the Walmart.
What's that?
Elena, would it be easier for you if
It's
we
not
all
10.
either wrote our preferences on paper for those
Is
of us
that
who are here,
star?
or email them to you,
Or we can just tell you right now.
or we could just tell you?
Yeah,
Okay.
Ma'am, is that
I'm
star?
gonna email her.
yes.
The north boundary one is star
Yes.
1878, okay, that's me, and that's number 10.
Yes, ma'am.
Elena, you know my preference, right?
I believe so.
Where I live, yeah, that's it. I'm
It would be
taking
Logansport Street, would it?
Yeah,
Well-
well, Logansport Street would be great.
Our star used to be called Logan's before my husband nearly moved out of town because.
And what number is it, Elena?
What,
Number 12?
Star used to be called Logan's.
Yeah, it did. It still referred to that on some.
He nearly had a heart
And
attack.
that takes in Mount
They
Street,
changed
that takes in all that.
Yes, that's 12.
Well,
I hate to run out, but I have to.
Yeah, that's the way you go.
So Elena, what is that area down?
Elena,
Shawnee,
Brad,
Anybody wanna do 10 with me?
Elena, what is the area called? Shawnee and all back there, what number is that?
So that's gonna be neighborhood 9.
10 is quite different.
I think I'll assign Roy to that one too, because he lives there.
yeah, you've got several people who could be assigned.
Anybody live in 10 besides me?
Elena, what was the northwest unit that you showed us?
No, has that been claimed?
That was number 7.
Oh, we
Oh,
just
I'm
said
sorry.
Seniors.
Yes, ma'am.
The
Yes,
north
ma'am.
of us
Is that
was
southeast?
Huh?
Is that south?
That's
One
south.
Mine is where,
We'll just reach out.
yeah, it's where
South, yeah.
10 is the one.
Yeah,
that
I'll
has,
probably just drive through it first.
Ed, what do you think?
How many
Sorry, it goes east to the road.
areas we
It has some
Is there a certain area of town that you wanna take on? Is there
And I'm
a certain area of town you wanna take on?
No, I'm gonna take it, I'm concerned that they're
Has anyone done SFA or the green?
taking care of the areas where people don't.
Not yet, so.
I can do that.
I'm really concerned about it. And I'm concerned that
Nah, they will never do that. It's,
Okay, so.
yeah. Well,
Okay, perfect, thank you. Does anyone else wanna do the
I know, they can sell it. to
neighborhood
people.
11, it's SFA and the surrounding neighborhoods and apartments across the street?
I'll do that one too. I think it goes all the way to the loop, right?
No, it goes all the way to West Austin to the north and then Star to the south.
Okay, cool.
That's a
I'll
lot
still
of
do it.
worse than stuff, so. I mean, I don't mind doing it, cause I'm there every day, so.
What number is that?
11.
Number 11. All right, now the downtown area, I already have, well, okay,
The downtown, does Logansport include downtown, is that what we're?
yes, yeah, I've actually got, I've got Kathleen, I've got Brad.
I'm sorry.
Fantastic.
Okay, so let's do number
She
1.
wanted to know who was doing the downtown
Can I do
Logansport.
Yeah,
Paul and I are gonna do 8.
well, Larry's doing 8 too.
Oh, okay. Oh, Larry, okay.
Okay, what about number 1? So this is, the southwest side of town. It's bounded by, what is that?
It's 21.
Yeah, 21, and then
Does that go after the airport?
West Side, yes.
You want, you're asking Paul to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll do that.
The one, okay.
And Paul will do it as
I
well.
sent you an email, and I put 2 places that I was.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Alright,
So these are.
alright, now, number 3, that's the, southwest side of town, so you've got South Street on the, east side, and then, oh my gosh, it keeps moving, so, I'm sorry about that. But you have a lot of single-family neighborhoods, a lot of, commercial, and then up here is West May, so West May to the north, South Street to the east, and then the loop pretty much, covers the rest of it.
I think Sydney registered volunteer.
Oh, she did, and I just missed it.
She said, no, she did say she would do whatever.
Right.
Oh, she's not here.
She texted me last minute, said she would.
Okay,
Okay.
Sydney and Carrie, I'm just gonna give them that, Sydney and Carrie.
There you go.
Number two, trying to go in order now, one. Actually, I think there's not a number two. Four. Okay, so 4 is the other side of South Street. It also includes some of our industrial area, the railroad tracks. It's gonna include Highland Park and the creek area. So do I have any volunteers for number 4? I think I am gonna go ahead and just put Marilyn as one, because she was able to make it today, and I think I'm gonna do Roy too, because he also is very familiar with that area.
Could you give me the boundaries for 9, please?
Oh, yes. And I'm gonna send out a map.
Okay, good, thank
Yeah, so 9 is bounded by East Main to the north. And then it's really kind of like this Solana Creek area. It doesn't have as many streets bounding it. So let me just send out a map, Mabel, and it'll have more specific information. Okay, 5 is the area north of the university. So this is a lot of single family. This is gonna include property along North Street as well. It's gonna be bounded by, let's see, that is Austin to the south. So, you've got your Kroger Shopping Center right here on the far corner. As you move up, you've got a lot of just vacant property along the university corridor. Apartments on the other corner, then you've got Northeast Stallings, this is gonna include Walmart. And then those residential neighborhoods that are bounded within that area. So this is neighborhood number 5. Is there anyone who maybe lives there or?
I'll do that one.
Okay.
Did Steele get assigned, so?
I'm gonna give Steele
He'll do that one too, and then he'll also do.
So the rest of these I'm gonna assign to the people who weren't here.
Yeah.
Is there anyone, I think Ed, you don't care, I'm just gonna assign a couple of you. Mabel, I've got you down for number 9, and
Ed will do all the rest.
He's already got pictures.
4.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So,
Because he knows the value of every single inch of it.
Yeah. Nicole, do you wanna do another one?
Yeah, just upload.
Maybe it's number 5.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just.
Okay. Okay, I think everyone else, I just that's some people who are here, and I think that really covers the main ones.
The photos you wanna lay up, are they representative of the homes
Yeah.
in
So-
those areas?
I'm gonna include some examples, so I'm gonna have like a sample image of like quality housing, maybe one of like something negative. I'll have sample images of each one, so you can kind of reference like, okay, here's what that might look like. So, we talk about, is more gonna be focused on like property maintenance versus, because, architecture and design, all that's kind of relative, unless it's like historic. I think if something's historic in nature, like, oh yeah, we should document that. But like, you have certain areas of town that are very well maintained, they're very manicured, the exterior's very maintained, and you have certain areas that have fallen into disrepair, or they're abandoned, or they're deteriorating. So those are kind of the examples of what we're gonna look at, not necessarily like the architecture or design, again, unless it's like historical or cultural in nature. So with each one, I'll provide some sample images to give you guys some ideas of what you might be looking for.
But you don't want commercial or industrial impacting area.
No, yeah, so there's gonna be general neighborhood character and then housing. So neighborhood is gonna include retail, it's gonna include, public areas, it's gonna include community facilities, it's gonna include industrial, it's gonna be a broader kind of.
One that comes to mind is like Brightcook, which is right in the middle of a big residential area.
Yeah,
So it impacts them.
absolutely, yeah. And then because housing is such a big topic, and we're really putting an emphasis on housing in this process, we wanna put that in its own category. So. All right, and for the people that stayed, thank you so much. I'm sorry this took so long. We do wanna go over just real quick some future stuff. So, our next steering committee meeting is May 12th. We're actually gonna have the consultant remote in and do some training. So we have these meeting in a box activities and these man on the street activities where essentially we can conduct our own meetings. DTJ is gonna create all the materials and exhibits, and we'll be able to take that and go to a church group or go to Rotary or go to a neighborhood association, kind of have our own meeting in a box, gather information, and then submit it back to the consultant. There's also gonna be activities where we're just attending community events, like Blueberry Festival is on June 11th. We plan on having a table there. We'd like for the community members to stop by, maybe help us as we're sharing information, talking to people. Those are more informal, where we're just having kind of one-off conversations. So they're gonna provide some resources, some training, give us some tips on how to, maybe conduct those, tips for if someone just approaches you and they're wanting to talk about the comp plan process, some ways you can share information. And so that's gonna be at the May 12th meeting, and it's gonna be recorded. So if you ever wanna go back and watch it, we can do that. And so that's gonna be May 12th, June 11th, it's a Blueberry Festival, mark your calendars. We'd love for you guys to come out and visit our table or help us man some of that stuff. June 9th, they're actually gonna be here doing an existing conditions report and presenting that to the committee. And so what we were thinking is in July, we would have our skip month. A lot of people are on vacation, a lot of people are out of town. So July, we were planning on skipping that for this committee and that just be our off month. And then August 25th and 26th, that's gonna be that two-day comprehensive plan visioning event. The students are back in town, professors are back, and so it's a good way to kick off the fall. At first, we were looking at doing it during the summer, but we really wanted to get as much participation as possible, and we didn't want to miss out on students not being here and faculty. So those are those dates, and I'm gonna send all this out too. So you'll have the PDF. And then September 26th, 27th, that's a two-day downtown plan visioning event where they'll have a design charrette and kind of have a similar process, but for the downtown. So we wanted to give you guys an idea of what's coming. And again, I'll send this out so you guys have it. You don't have to worry about taking notes. And then we'll send out more information about the survey and the neighborhood units. And so be looking for things for me over the weekend, early next week. Any questions? I know we went long, I'm sorry about that.
It's Jeff Adams' fault.
I hope you guys have a great holiday weekend. The city's gonna be closed tomorrow, so I won't be answering my phone, but I'll be available by email if you guys have any questions. And if you don't have my cell, let me know, I'll share it with the group.
Why don't you take a day off?
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and staying. We're really excited to start getting out there and collecting data and doing some community events, and we just wanna thank you for volunteering your time.